Oh God, it's so exciting.
Happy Hail Bob Day.
It is a happy Hail Bob Day.
Hello, the curse of Diarm.
It's the best finishing score we've seen at 5-star level.
That was our elo coming into the competition.
Eventing manager is back.
Best show that we have, Alphabetti Spaghetti.
Looking forward to seeing quality horses.
Still a great day for Ireland.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
I mean, you're a bit of an eventing geek just like us.
And it's time to get on with the show. Welcome to the Echoratings Eventing Podcast, and it is an Eventing Podcast Classics episode. Now, it is a new year, and we thought it was the perfect time to be looking back on a show that we did at the start of 2020, New Year, New Targets, and it was Sam's take on training and goal setting. So we hope that there is lots in this episode to help you get inspired for a brand new year and enjoy. It was first published on the 30th of December 2019. So about 2 years later, it is back for you to enjoy once again.
It's New Year's Day and we're back. Sam and myself this time. It is an Echorating special, just the two of us. Sam, Happy New Year.
Thanks, Dee. What a year it's going to be, 2020. A new decade. There we go.
New decade. Yeah, new decade. I have brought you out of your Christmas slumber for a normal Wednesday episode, and I thought it might be useful. I mean, I don't want to make this too heavy because it is still Christmas after all, but I thought new year, new start, it is a good time to check in on goal setting, target setting. It's something we do with a lot of our high performance clients. We made a promise this year that we would be targeting and looking to help people all across the sport rather than just in those 4 and 5 star competitions. So with that in mind, I thought it would be useful to have a chat around why to set goals, how to set goals, what those goals might be in eventing. I think we should take a look at your goals. We can talk about Echorating's goals if needs be, or if we get to it at the end. So little bits of why and little bits of how. So with that in mind, I think we will start at the very outset. Talk to me about your goals for 2020, and then within that we'll break down a little bit of why we're setting them in that way and how you're setting them.
Well, firstly, dear, may I commend you on coming up with such an original concept for a podcast on New Year's Day, goal setting. And I don't know if it's ever been done before. No, I just it is a good time of year for doing it. I find this a really motivating time of year as well, to be honest, because there's the right amount of rest and recovery that has happened from the previous season. And I actually have a very early start to my season, the earliest start I've ever had to a season, because I'm going to Portugal. I'm going on that spring tour for various reasons to have Horse for Art Highlight back out on the circuit again and get him his qualification for the Olympics to try and get that underway. But also with an Olympic year, everything is quite early. You know, we're used to autumn championships, so Worlds and Europeans are often September, October time. The Olympics is August, so it fits in with all the horses, so they're all going down there. So my horses are all in work. Preseason is well underway, and it's a good time to the goals and the objectives really take my training that I'm doing from just, hard work and putting in the hours and putting in the effort to, very smart, purposeful, focused work. And I suppose because
Can I ask you something at this point? And I guess I have some prior knowledge of this, but it wasn't always that way, I don't think. I don't mean to sound harsh in saying that. But when we started Echoratings, your time became severely limited. You had 2 kids in the first year of Echoratings, or a year apart, a year and a day apart as the 2 boys are. So between family life, a new business, and also, I guess at that time it would have been Blair Europeans, and then into our last Olympic year, and all of the championships that have come since that. Your time in the last 5 years of this decade was very different to your time in the first, and I think that would have been similar in how you trained.
Yeah, good point. It was when I became quite time poor, I suppose, when it came to riding, because I had the business to run and everything. I still, every time I think about this, I remember that time at Barbary when when I said to you, because we were doing our first Event Rider Masters commentary, and I think I was on commentary because you were anchoring as this was the birth of Diarm, the commentator. I had done the dressage on Luke's well, but we had sold him, so I was then withdrawing him, and I knew Bushman was on the verge of retirement, and I just said to Diarm, I was like, will I just tell everyone on the ERM that I'm going to retire? And you're like, I think I like to tell myself that you knew that was too much of an early call, but your response was, sure, no one will care. Actually,
well, I mean, no, you're making it sound a lot harsher than it was. You, if I remember correctly, had given it a reasonable degree of thought, and it did feel like a time that you might, be focusing a lot more of your attention in different areas, almost like a semi-retirement rather than a retirement. But I think you had asked me, look, I think we'll save this. I was going to release something on social media, but actually I think I'll save this, and if I have an interview with Alice at the end, I think I'll announce it then. And that was the point at which I was like, no, don't be bothering with all that. No,
I'm glad you did. But I mean, that was the point. I was definitely focusing on work more, on echo ratings far more. And yes, we were blessed to have the kids growing up, and they were a great age as well at that point. So not to say that they're a terrible age now. I mean, they're just mayhem and whatever. But no, it was all fun. But I had a lot going. And then as Horse Rider Highlight was becoming more than just a kind of turnaround project to see would he be a kind of junior young rider horse again. It was starting to look like he could actually be a championship horse. And Imperial Sky and Tullabeg Flamenco were rapidly going up the grades and becoming top level horses as well. I was having to really think about how to maximize what I was getting out of my training with them. I also, by having a high level view of the sport every afternoon and looking at high performance team statistics, looking at even looking at the risk side of the sport as well, I would say my kind of comprehension of the sport. There's a lot of surprising things about the sport that don't strike you. Like the big one for me since I started working with echo ratings is how different individual eventing is compared to team eventing. Team eventing is all about reliability. That is just, how do I deliver 3 clear rounds on cross country, with minimal damage thereafter.
But even to an individual rather than to a team manager, how do I jump clear cross country is essentially the beginning of that. Like a clear round cross country on a 35 will not win you 4-star shorts at a lot of the big ones. A clear round of jumping on a 35 contributed to your World Games silver medal.
Yeah, and that became to be honest, that the future I saw for myself was that, okay, if I go to another championship, seeing as I hadn't been to a championship in 2016 or 2017, if I do get back in the team, I want to be, I just want to be the solid team player. I have the experience of, I've plenty of championships under my belt. And that was actually how this is, now we're talking about goal setting. So now we're at the why. So, because I'll tell you what my goal was then. But why I was focusing on the area that I was focusing on was because I wanted, if I was going to keep eventing, I enjoy the championships. I enjoy being part of the team. And I feel I have a strength, and I felt I was much better cut out to be the reliable guy than to be the winner. I haven't I've not been close to winning a 5-star. I think 6th is my highest. I haven't been in the top 5 in a 5-star yet. Whereas I've been accounting scored every single championship I've been to, and then the one time I wasn't on the team at a championship, I had the best score of all the Irish riders. So I love championships. I love the pressure. And so I said, right, that's who I'm going to be. If I'm doing echo ratings part-time, if I'm raising a family, I'm doing this for fun, but I want to do it well. I don't want to do it badly. And I'll focus on being the team player. So it became all about reliability. I I knew why to set that goal because I knew that was important. And then actually looking at my own stats back at the end of 2017, going into 2018, I was really a little bit disappointed with my clear jumping rates at
And
all
just to
5
stop
and
you
4
here,
star.
when you're saying reliability, that's really what you're referencing. Your
Your ability to
your clear cross country jumping rate.
jumping rate on one specific number. That's exactly it. And then when I fleshed it out a little bit more, I had very few FODs, as we were calling them, so finishing on your dressage score at the top level, at long formats, 4 and 5 star, and the short 4 star. But it's very hard to do it at a short 4 star because the time penalties are more influential. But I had very few, so it was reliability first and FOD second, and that was how I trained. So I didn't tell Ian Woodhead, my dressage trainer. I didn't tell anyone except myself, but I said, look, if I can finish on whatever my dressage score, because it wasn't disastrous, it was just average. And, you can spend an awful lot of time trying to bring those scores down a mark or two. And to be honest, aiming for a world championship, that 2 judges can look at you doing your test anyway. And, you have to, you can't let that get in the way, because I'll talk about 2019 afterwards, where I did focus on dressage, and you eventually have to just tackle that and tackle some of the disappointment and setback that comes with maybe your score not being, or your dressage test not being scored favorably. But you're
doing it from a strong base of reliability first, particularly if your goal is a team goal, as it was all across 2018.
Yeah, so that was the why, and then the what. But and then how I did it was I completely changed my my training program. I did cross country every week, and I have I made a play area at home with banks and ditches. For me, where those problems happen on cross country more often than not is where course designers have used a bit of uneven ground and usually a turn as well. So, because they're trying to throw you off. Because on a level arena in a, like in a sand arena, if you're building a double of corners or skinnies or an oxer turn, there's too much grip. Everything's too stable. Everything is too staged and set up. And also, I started to do it under fatigue as well. So I'd go off and do my canter work, and then I'd come back and do footwork with the horses. Once they'd actually had they'd had a full fitness workout, so they were tired, and they're walking back to the yard thinking it's all over. And I go straight past the yard out to the field and do, 4 or 5 minutes, just pick them back up, and then go and do, another 4 or 5 minutes of just jump, turn, up, down, keep your and it was amazing how, when their legs were a little bit more jelly-like, their minds had been wanted to switch off and think work was over. It was amazing how it just started to wake them up. So, and to be honest, like that, there's a few things going on there that are number driven. So there's a bit of creativity in thinking about how I train. But the reason I changed it was because I had been doing the same thing for 10 years. Like I had been jumping barrels and corners that I was making, and doing it all on surfaces, going to cross country schooling in inverted commas rather than cross country training. Like I would go to places and jump ditches and I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing. I wasn't trying to get inside Mike Etherington Smith's head, Pierre Michelet's head, Captain Mark Phillips, thinking about, starting to analyze courses, going, why has he put that fence there? And that's what I started to do, because now I was looking at a 66% clear rate at long format, and that wasn't good enough. It's like, how do I get that to 75%, 80, 90%? I'm going to have to, because I was still above the average, like those long formats, like 5-star, the average clear rate is now below 55%. So yeah. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't elite.
You're touching on a couple of interesting things, and this is like, I know you laughed at me at the start of the show in terms of my originality in a goal setting podcast on New Year's Day, and I will grant you how unoriginal it is. But you're touching on a couple of really interesting things, which I think is one of the reasons that I really enjoy working with you on the equiting side. And one of your big strengths is that ability to think. And it sounds quite basic, but it's actually not as common as we think. Even I know myself, I'm a really good doer. And why me and you are a good team is because you're a really good thinker. And
But I'd never get anything done.
yeah,
So
but equally,
that's why I have
do.
Sparks and I have you. It's true.
But, you
It
know,
is true.
But equally, you're a very good thinker. And one of the things that I think is interesting in what you're doing, and I know just from talking to a lot of not just event writers, but people in lots of different professions, one of the things which we can get trapped in is doing things without thought, constantly going into a routine and finding ourselves on that conveyor belt where we get up, we go to work, whatever that work is. We have our lunch, we get our afternoon work done, we come home, we go to the gym, we play football, we watch Netflix, whatever it is. And we move through, a whole year. And let's not let 2020 be that year where we move through it without thought. I think it's really interesting listening to your journey over that kind of second part of this decade where actually you began to say, why is that happening? Really challenging. I mean, even your analysis of your training in 2018, which would have been built around improving that reliability, a very specific goal in terms of I want to ensure that when I go to a championship, I am the counting score, I will jump clear. And actually how that changed in 2019 on that base of reliability, your training changed because you are now focused on a new goal, which would have been actually recognize that my strength is cross country. We have built up a good reliability rate. I'm coming off this from a very good reliability rate. I'm seen as a good cross country rider, but 35 is just not competitive enough. And if I could even get it to a 33 and a half or a 32 and maintain what I'm doing in the cross country phase, this gets really competitive. Now 2019, and we'll come on to that in a moment, but 2019 you began to deliver some dressage tests below 30. And you won your first 4-star long this year, but also you finished on your lowest ever finishing score in the Event Rider Masters at Mill Street when you were second behind Lucy Jackson, and you finished on a 27.5. Talk to me about how your off-season or your training plan changed based on your new goal in 2019.
Well, when I went to Buccalo at the end of 2018, and this was after WEG, and I got a 35.5 or something again. I think the same score as WEG on Tullabeg Flamenco at Buccalo. And I fully had the expectation, I would say, not even the ambition, the expectation that I was going to be below 30. And I was miles off it. And it maybe having played WEG went so according to plan in that I felt that myself and Cahill had a job. We were 1 and 2 in the team. We had a job to put a score on the board, and we both did that. And then Sarah and Porrig were our star players. And that if either of them went by the wayside, myself and Cahill had enough security there that we could still win a medal, and that would have happened. But as it was, our 2 star players performed, won an individual medal, one just dropped out of the individual medals and was right there, top 5. So it was huge, but it went so according to plan. And I guess it then made me think, okay, well, what's the next step? And I knew I said to Sparks, I was like, well, that's it. I am giving up now. This is the end this was after Buccalo when I did the bad dressage. And to be honest, I don't think it was a bad dress. I think I was fairly hardly marked, but then we all say that, don't we? But that's again what made me, it was a little bit of a moment going, you can't keep coming out saying, you were, you didn't get a good mark from the judges. You did a good test, but they didn't give you the mark you deserved. That can't happen all the time because, I'm too analytical to do that. I'm not the outlier who got unlucky every time. So I had to and I said, look, I don't want to do it. I've good horses here coming through, and it's time to now become more competitive individually. So that's when that's so first phase focused. If you have personal ambitions, you have to start strong in that first phase. So that's the phase I went to, and focused on that a lot. And the other one that was that because I never wanted to lose sight of the reliability. So we have one of our tools is called zone analysis, and there are 9 zones, and the best is a sub 28 finish. The worst is a DNF. And I actually never had a sub 28
What's the
finish.
DNF for people now?
Did not finish, so non-complete. So a fall or a something like that.
And all the zones in between then are broken up. So
exactly. So
32, and they're all finishing scores you're talking about here.
All finishing scores, which is a really important. If you don't, again, high performance people will have it, and we will, I'm sure, with our national, our national federations that are partners with us, will make the zone analysis clear, because it's a great starting point. So for me, I'm quite good. I'd be well above average in the 32 to 36 finishing score zone, which is actually the third zone. And I had 1 or 2 in 28 to 32, which would be my best finishes. But I didn't have any sub 28s, not even at 2-star level. So thanks to Imperial Sky, I managed to put one of those on the board at the Nations Cup in Campfire, and then followed up again a month later with the second one in Mill Street. So that was actually a goal.
That was a goal. I want to go a little bit more high level outside of you for a moment, because one of the things that you're talking about here as you talk about tools like zone analysis, which is checking what bracket your finishing scores fall into, and is a doable thing for most people who are interested in their own performance. You can look at your 2019 scores and see where were my zones, how many were in which zone, and then you're setting targets on getting into that zone above it. Or if you felt you were kind of lucky and just scraped into that zone, then really consolidating performances within that 28 to 32 or 32 to 36 or 36 to 40. And anywhere from a high performance point of view, from a team point of view, anywhere up to those kind of sub 40 scores are still very competitive and very likely to be counting scores. 40 to 45 is one of the key areas where you see quite a lot of people, and that goal has to be, can I somehow, whether it's slight improvement in my dressage, whether it's cross-country training around time spent at jumps and being able to reduce those time penalties a little bit, whether it's a single pole here or there, can I get into that sub 40 zone? So that's the zone analysis. What you're touching on here, pal, with that, and with your assessment of your reliability as a goal in 2018, your assessment of your dressage as a goal in 2019 is one of the first parts of what we have used as our tagline across 2019, which has been measure, improve, repeat. One of the things for people who are starting the year now is this concept of measure. So beginning a journey or a process of improvement, whether it's in EC ratings and it's looking at business accounts or clients or something like that, or whether it's improving your first phase score, improving what zone you're finishing in, whether it's sporting or whether it's business, measure and understanding where you are now is that really key, crucial first step to improvement. You've got to know where you are now, because that for me feels like a huge part of why people are confused or find it difficult to set a plan, because they haven't had access to it.
It's why they go around, and it's why we all go around in circles. You made that point earlier, saying, I'm good at thinking about things and all the rest. But what drives me to look at it is the measurement. This is the headline of like what goal setting is about. But this is, for me, what fuels progress. You have to start with measure. You can't. You get annoyed because when I overuse this analogy, but it's January 1st, so I'm allowed to use it. But weight loss, if we don't, and it's not just about getting on the weighing scales, so we know where we are and we can work out what we've got to lose and stuff like that. It's so we can validate our process. It's so we can validate how we do it. Because if you get on the weighing scales every single year and you have the same strategy going, well, I'm going to exercise more, and it never happens, that strategy is not working for you. You need to look at, maybe you should look at something with diet. Maybe you should cut something out. And then you can validate where that's working for you. If you eat less potatoes, if you, reduce amount of dairy, I don't know. I'm not a dietitian, so please do not take any of this advice.
I'm going to stop you there. That
But
won't be happening.
pick a tactic that works for you, and then because you are measuring, you can validate. But we started a business, and if your bottom line is the most obvious number that you're going to look at, then you look at what goes into your bottom line. You look at your revenue, you look at your costs. But if you are not measuring, you cannot manage, you won't improve. And if improvement happened, it was by chance and it wasn't systematic, and it won't be repeatable. And that's what we're talking about here is people who are interested enough in performance that they want to improve it. And then what you'll actually get addicted to, and this is now what drives me, and this is what I love about riding now, and to be honest, about business and sport, is actually the process of improvement and progress, because it's really fun. And when you start getting a little bit better, then you're going, oh, this worked because it really improved that really improved our bottom line doing that, by saving costs in that area, or by branching out and increasing revenue in that area. That really worked. And you get addicted to it, and you want to repeat it, and you want to do that more. And it's been the same for the last 2 years. I now want to combine the progress I've made to get into the 20s in the first phase, bring back in some of my reliability focus that I had in 2018, which maybe just got sacrificed a little bit in 2019 by focusing too much. And I'm going to combine those two things, combine what I've learned, because I know they both worked. I have a bit of validation on both. But I wouldn't have that if I wasn't, I probably wouldn't have even done it in the first place if I wasn't measuring. And I certainly wouldn't have the validation.
So if someone is listening now, Sam, in terms of that first piece, because we don't want to just talk about measurement this year, 2020, as an EC ratings goal and an EC ratings deliverable, we've talked about it a lot, is making sure that people have an idea as to how to measure, as to where to start. We released the 6RA in 2019, a very, very simple concept, the 6-run average. It's a dressage measurement, and it just looks at your last 6 dressage results, any level at all of the sport. And you get your average from your last 6 runs. So you can do it yourself very simply on a calculator. And it gives you, there's lots of data science behind keeping something very simple. And we've looked at why not 10 or why not 3. 3, the sample is a little bit too small and it varies. 10, you don't actually see any more than you do at 6. And you begin to go back a little bit too far in a lot of riders' records. So 6 turned out to be the perfect number. And Sean Murray was a key part of creating that. But the 6-run average gives you your first measurement for where you are in that first phase. So as a measurement, I would say that is a really good start. Again, if you're focused on the first phase, if you're focused on individual improvement, that's a place that absolutely at the lower levels, you can set it as a target and begin to improve it, because we've seen at the lower levels, I actually have some numbers here from an article, Sam, that we did on British Eventing this year. It was called Science Made Simple, and it was in BE Life, but it looked at British Eventing at 80, 90, 100 and novice. Look, we talked about this all the way up to 5-star, Sam, in the last couple of years, but that first number to really take note of is a number of 30 at all of those levels, 80, 90, 100 and novice. The average winning score was less than 30. It was 29 at 80, 27.1 at 90, 26.7 at 100 and 29.5 at novice. That's a winning score. Now your top 5 score came in somewhere around the mid 30s at all those levels. Your top 5 score at 5-star is likely to be, well, maybe a little bit higher. Your winning scores for the last couple of years have been fairly standard around that 28 number. You've had a couple that are below Tom McEwen at Poe. You've had a couple that are above Willinga Park at Adelaide. But 28 tends to give you a fairly good indication, even across the sport. So depending on what your goal is, lower levels, higher levels, if you're putting your first one in place and we're saying start to measure, I would say, okay, start with your 6RA. It's accessible and doable for everyone and gives you a point. Sam, cross country, as a brief one, and we will have tools coming out with a lot of our clients to help you do this. But just having an idea as to how often you're jumping clear gives you something. And I mean that for both those jumping phases.
Yeah, we look at clear rates. As you go up the levels, I look at and this is what our simple metric is to look at the average clear rates in regards to cross country, or the average penalties with regards to show jumping in the competitions you've contested. So if you're at 5-star, the clear rates are lower, and the average show jumping penalties are generally higher as well. So you're tracking, you have to do both. You obviously track your own clear rate, which is an easy one to do. We do it over 10 runs. I'll get to that in a second as to why it's 10 rather than 6. But you're looking at your clear rate, but then you're looking at it, you're comparing that to what's the average clear rate of those competitions that I've been competing in, so that are you plus or minus. So flamenco, Tolobek flamenco is 80% clear, because I've had 2 problems this year. The first 2 in his career on his international record, which it was gutting. It cost me a podium finish in an ERM and a bloody team silver medal and a champion. So but put that to one side. It's 80%. You're disappointed. It's dropped, and I obviously want to get that up. But the only thing I'll say is that because he's stepped up to 5-star this year, because he's been in those ERMs and he's been at those top level events, he's actually still just ahead of the average in terms of the competitions he's been competing in. So it's still positive. Had I dropped down to 60%, I'm now below average. Now, I don't want to be above average. This is a horse who's got the Olympics in sight. So you want to be. You're not comparing yourself to average. You're trying to put yourself right up there at an elite level. So I'll be working on that. But that's a good. It's important because this applies to. I'm talking about goal setting for horses with Tokyo in mind, but the exact same numbers apply to you if you're for my own 5-year-olds that are just getting going, or 4-year-olds or whatever. So grassroots to top level, it's the same, and those are some easy ways of doing it. And we'll put those methods and those simple metrics out there that will be supplied to you when we're fully partnered up with the federations, and that makes it easier. But we're very much talking about, there's a few things going on here. Like why am I setting targets based on a 6-run average for dressage, or a kind of a 10-run assessment of my performance with regards to cross country and show jumping? And the reason is because you want to eliminate your success and your progress being due just to chance, just being one-off. What we're talking about is repeatable performance, that actually the whole thing's coming down. And so therefore, when it comes to setting your goals, and I know Diarm you were talking about the global averages and stuff like that for the sport, which is interesting and will help to motivate some people. But really what you want to look at where you are now, and actually don't go for wild, massive, huge jumps. If you're like, I'm coming out of a world game, or I was coming out of a world games in 2018 with a 35.5 dressage. Yes, it's okay for me to set a goal saying I'd like my average to be, below 32 or something, take 3.5 marks off it, because that was a high score for me in that season. But really I need to look at where my 6 RA is, where my 6-run average is, and just take 1 mark off that is because that's repeatable progress. You're gonna struggle to do that in one performance, and if you've done it, if you get it done early, that's fine. But allow yourself room for, don't set yourself up to fail. Make it achievable, and make it systematic, and then you can reset again.
That achievable piece is interesting. And look, we can finish on this. It's been a scientific New Year's Day, which lots of people probably don't want, Sam. But
food comas, they're now properly passed out.
The last thing you want on New Year's Day is to be told, here's how you need to improve your life.
It's good. I think I'm really motivated. I'd
be ready for it on like the 2nd or 3rd, but I think on the 1st, I'm still a bit like, come on, give me a break.
Too much brandy butter, whipped cream.
Big fan of my ma's brandy butter, I must say. One thing to finish on here, something that just is in line with not being too hard on yourself, and that is the achievable piece of this goal. You mentioned taking a 6 RA or a 6 run average and focusing on taking a mark off, or focusing on improving your show jumping by 1 pole over your next 3 runs. Talk to me about, one of the things that I know you took a lot of comfort from when you looked at the sport at a high level was actually what was achievable with an okay score. So when we speak to a lot of riders at a lot of different levels, one of the things that comes back to us is, well, I have done a dressage test of 28 and I have jumped clear and I have been inside the time and I've also kept all the poles up. My target for this event is a 28. Finish, yes. And it's something we come across quite often, in that people say, well, is a goal something that I want to achieve, or is it something that that you think is realistic, not me? Talk to me about that top 25% of your performance, because the pressure that people put on themselves with some of the goals they set is often not helpful.
Yeah, like we're not running the 100 meters. We don't have, we're not just looking at that one time of, we're running 9.8 seconds day in, day out. So aiming for 9.75. We have, and we have a lot of chance in the sport as well. So if you are an above average show jumper, is jumping clear 50% of the time. They are above average. And even at that, you're going to have on your record a good few clear rounds, a good few with 1 down, and the odd one with 2 down as well. So that's a difference in 8 marks as to how as to what your finishing score could look like. Then you've got the time penalties in varying conditions. You've got the chance of a run out, and with dressage, there's a lot of natural variance, which is actually outside of your control. Like before we even get into whether the horse feels like it wants to do dressage today, you've got whether the judge likes what you've presented, because they do disagree. 4-mark disagreements are very normal in the sport. So there's plus or minus another pole, but that's very normal for one judge to be thinking 71% and another judge to be thinking 67%. We see that all the time. So there's a lot of variance. So you don't have, you can't say about someone, oh, that person's going to finish, on a 32. And even if you say in and around a 32, you're luring yourself into thinking between 30 and 34. And in reality, the variance is way bigger than that. So you've got to get a handle on that by having a good understanding of each of your phases, being actually look back at your results, be your own analyst, because it's often not as good as we think it is. And we're very much focused on that. And don't lose sight of, don't lose your natural optimism. That's important. It's a hard job, but every so often you have to become an analyst as well, so that you're not just running around in circles. And then I always aim for my top 25%, which sounds a bit I remember saying this to Aidan O'Brien or Anne-Marie O'Brien, and they're like, well, our horses have to be, if they're 1% below par, it's not gonna work out. When we say the top 25%, this is the top 25% of your projected scoring distribution. So, and this sounds complicated. I don't want to lose people here, but the top 25% of how you're expected to perform may well be in PB territory, in nearly all of that top quarter. It could all be in PB territory. It's basically saying if you were to perform 4 times, we want the best one of those 4 performances. That's your top 25%. And that is actually, when you look at racehorses, if you look back at any of those top racehorses and you take their best run out of their last 4, it probably is in PB territory. But you're taking the pressure off. It's a whole different way of looking at your performance, rather than going, if I say I want to finish on a 28, and my subconscious knows that is, I've got to perform the best performance of my life. I've got to do something I've never done before. Yeah. Whereas if I say I've got to score something that's achievable in dressage, something that's achievable in cross country, and something that's achievable in show jumping, it's just a different way of looking at it. And
it's essentially not, your goal is not a PB every time. And that is different to the way we sometimes talk about that in terms of a tactical run. That's a completely different thing again. But your goal is to be within certain brackets of measured, slow, repeatable progress. And essentially, rather than having one major outlier, like you would, not an outlier, but rather than having to run for one single time, as you do with the guys who'll be going to the Olympics for the 100 meters, you're actually trying to slowly move your performance to the left-hand side. So to the lower end of performance, to the lower scores, but slowly. That zone analysis is a really easy way of visualizing that. And you're just trying to shift your finishing score slightly to the left as often as you can, but without necessarily thinking I've done a 27.5 as you did this year, Sam, or last year now. And next time you go in there, your goal is to finish on a 27.5 because you've done it. It sets you up for almost constant disappointment, which is also quite unhelpful for progress. Very briefly, pal. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to give people a quick way of doing it. If you, rather than, because looking at your best score in your last four is too much in PB territory. So a lot of people will have 8 results on the board. So go and look at your second best result from your last 8. And if you take that as if you want a number to aim at, whether it's first time out or maybe you're going to take your first run to warm the horse up or whatever, but that first time you're looking for a big performance this season, if you take that as the target, what it allows you to do is, firstly, there's a bit of a deep breath going, okay, well, I've achieved that score before, so it's going to feel quite achievable, but you're now going to think far more analytically about what it takes to produce that. So you're going to go, well, if it's a 29.5, you're going to say, well, I've probably, in your last 8 runs, your dressage score is probably, if that's your second best finishing score, I'm sure you've been below that in dressage, probably 3 or 4 times. So that's very achievable. So of course you want to give yourself as much of a cushion as possible and things like that. No one ever wants to leave marks behind, but you've stopped heaping way too much pressure on yourself, probably over focusing on producing a PB in one phase, which is dressage. And now you're thinking much more about the process the whole way through. How fit does the horse need to be? What are my threats? Okay, a late run out at a right-handed corner, because I had one of those before. You're thinking about it, way more now. Okay, what about my show jumping? Because I'm probably going to need a clear round. If I have a really good dressage, I might afford a rail, but I'm probably going to need a clear. So again, how is that most likely to be produced? Going, okay, back rail of an oxer coming out of a combination, that's had us before. Let's look at why that might be happening, and maybe call my show jumping trainer and see if we can just work on that a little bit. You'll be much more kind of, because you're feeling comfortable. You can be your analyst and you can be the executioner, and you can be the person that helps it to perform. That's just my opinion on it, by the way.
No, it's all good. Okay, I think that's enough of goal setting for today. What do you think? You happy?
I think that's enough. Yeah. So I've got realistic goals. We've covered that. Pushing the comfort zone a little bit, but it has to be achievable. So it is important to put something that just makes you feel a little bit.
Yeah, to be brave.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit brave, but and definitely, again, I know we are talking on the these single performance ones I've just talked there about how to prepare yourself for one competition. There was a bit of psychology in that you're probably picking up as to why not to put too much pressure on yourself. But the big objective for 2020, I would encourage that to be about moving your averages in the right direction. And because that's going to be far more meaningful, because even if you get that one, remember, you're going to have several bites of the cherry when it comes to producing a performance. And you've probably done it before, you've maybe won an event before, you've made, whatever your goals are, you want to make sure it wasn't just the day that everything went right. I always say if you get the process right, the outcomes will look after themselves, and that's lots of people say that. That's not me. I haven't just invented that. That's what every
you
media trained athlete.
You claimed it there. I'm happy to
All
give
right,
it to you,
Mr. Original goal setting man on the 1st of January. So no, but I think we've covered it then. And what I like about the measurement is remember to validate your so with regards to training, if you look back at your metrics, and because it might be that your 6RA has improved by a mark, year on year. It actually should have improved by about half a mark year on year, particularly at international level, because that's how much the sport is improving. Its average year on year is by half a mark per year. So, your 6RA should be coming down a little bit, which is why you want to be aiming for at least a mark, but don't go crazy on it. But if you haven't been improving, then it's probably, you might want to look at how you've been training. And who you've been training with, but
so you've got your key takeaways. You have to start to measure, or it all becomes a bit pointless. You find yourself a bit stuck, not thinking. You have to try and go into you have to push your comfort zone a little bit. In that, even the way Sam's talking about that second best of your last 8, it's still right up there. You've got to push your comfort zone a little bit, but also ensure that what you're talking about is achievable. And in that particular example, you've already achieved it and better. So already that it is achievable.
And you want to make that your norm. So making that good result become a normal result. Do you want that to become your average?
Yep.
Which is hard, that's hard to do.
We've talked about individual competitions, but we've talked probably more importantly about general improvement and not trying to create a single one-off good performance. And we've talked about some of the tools. So 6-run averages. We've talked about clear rates, jumping clear rates at the level of that competition, or even more specifically at that exact competition and how that course jumped on that day. We've talked about some of the tools which we hope will come out in 2020, but also some of the ways that you can do it yourself. As a really simple one, Sam, I really like that second best finishing score in your last 8, because it's something you can check immediately. And we have talked about zone analysis is the other one to remember, and what zone your performance fit into. There was 9 zones starting at sub 28, 28 to 32, 32 to 36, 36 to 40, 40 to 45, 45 to 50. And then I think we go into the, was it 50 to 60, 60 plus, and DNF.
Yeah.
As your 9 different zones, and checking where your finishing scores are and how many are in what zone. And is there a way in which you can begin to push into the zone slightly to the left, so slightly lower, as a 2020 goal. New Year's Day, pal, we have got a little bit more of these Christmas holidays to eke out before I drag you all kicking and screaming back into the office. So thank you for taking time out of your holiday. If you could describe Christmas with 20 horses and 2 children as a holiday.
25 horses and, lovely to have the entire family, Watson clan, over from England, cousins. Fantastic. It's been great.
Oh, happy birthday, by the way. Are you feeling old?
Well, I'm 10 days younger than you, so I feel great compared to you.
I look young now since I got my hair cut. It's like a little trick. Anyway, time's up. I'm going to get
just your opinion and your review of yourself and your own image.
Yeah, but it's also very important to have a good view of oneself. A key.
That's true. As long as you're happy. Yeah.
If you can't love yourself,
I would obviously put a poll out there on Twitter, because I'd want to measure what people think of my appearance. And no, I wouldn't, because I can't improve it.
No, you couldn't.
There's no changing.
Twitter is not a good place for that kind of stuff. Twitter is quite an unkind community compared to Instagram.
Unkind, yeah.
Twitter is brutal. I feel we're drifting at the end of this pod, and there is Christmas holidays to be had. Thank you for your time. Thanks for being honest, telling us the stories about your goal setting, and I will see you in the office next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Eventing Podcast Classics. Don't forget that the entire back catalogue of the show are available to go back and listen to for free on your chosen platform, or just go to echoratings.com/podcast and you can find the link to go and look back and peruse them at your leisure. There's over 500 previous podcasts, everything from interviews, event previews and reviews, you name it. It is all available for you to go back. So why not go and have a delve and see what you might listen to next. For now, though, that is all we've got time for. We'll be back very soon with more. Thank you for listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. And I look forward to having you back with us soon.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more.
Listeners, we'll speak to you again soon.